My name's Katie Green. I'm living in Florida now. I'm still a transplant from New England, and I've been a storyteller for a long time. And this is a story that I used to tell in New England. I have told it in Florida only a couple of times through the fence. Hot. Oh, it was hot. July 1983. And my daughter Whitney and I were in our tan Chevy van driving west to Romulus, New York. Hot. We were going to the Women's Peace Encampment next door to the Seneca Falls Army Depot. Now, this was during the time of the nuclear freeze, when Russia and the United States were building up more and more, larger and larger nuclear weapons, and people were concerned, people were scared, and people were demonstrating all over the world. Germany, Italy, England, France, people were on the streets saying nuclear weapons are not safe for anyone. Now, Whitney and my family had spent many years going to demonstrations and protests and sometimes even planning them. So Whitney was used to this sort of activity. Hot, I said, it was hot. You know, back in 1983, cars didn't have so much air conditioning. And if you were on the highway and the windows were rolled down, oh, you couldn't talk because the wind was beating you up. And if you rolled the windows up, it was so hot you felt like you were baking. To make the 6-hour trip a little bit shorter, Whitney read the handbook out loud to me as I drove, the handbook from the Women's Peace Encampment. And so we learned that in 1590, the women of the great Iroquois nation gathered in that very same spot, Seneca Falls, New York, to talk about what they might do to end war between their nations. And then in 1848, women again went to Seneca Falls for the very first women's rights convention. And now, here we were, 350 years later, going to the very same spot, all women, to talk about how we might make the world a safer, more peaceful place. Now, when we arrived at the Women's Peace Encampment and set up our tents and learned the rules, we both saw women behaving in a different way that we had never seen before. Why, women were looking at each other full face and talking. There were all sizes of women, all shapes of women, all ages of women, from all sorts of different backgrounds, secretaries, housekeepers, nurses, teachers, doctors, mothers, grandmothers, all sizes, all shapes, all colors, and the women were working together, cooking together, eating together, and talking together. And they talked and talked and talked and talked. It's true. Women can talk. Now, my job, because we all had to have a job somewhere for a few hours in the encampment, my job was to type in the office. And while I was doing that, my daughter Whitney, 16 years old and full of righteous energy to make the world a better place, came in to me and she said, "Mom, there's a group of women who are going to walk from the Women's Peace Encampment to the gates of the Army Depot. And they're walking to show that we are here in peace. I'm going to go with them." "All right," I said. And they took off. I watched the group of about 15 to 20 women walking together ragtag group, some of them in jeans that were ripped and t-shirts that were tie-dyed, others in skirts, and some had short hair and some had long hair or braids, all different sorts of women walking together. And from here on, this story is really one that my daughter told me. She said they walked along the high chain link fence that had 2 layers of razor wire coils on top. And behind that fence, there were signs placed, "No trespassing." And some of the signs said, "Any civilian caught on this land will be shot." Ooh, that was scary. And once in a while, they would see soldiers standing behind the fence and looking out, standing straight and tall, looking straight ahead, wearing helmets and holding guns. The women looked at the soldiers and thought, "Oh my goodness, they just look like robots." And there they are, they're standing there, they are guarding weapons that could destroy the entire world. And the more they walked and looked at those soldiers, the more that they became sure that those men back there were just like robots, not thinking, not aware of what they were doing at all, with no feelings or no compassion. And as they walked, the women sang, "And everyone 'neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone 'neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid." And they looked at the soldiers and sang, "And into plowshares turn their swords. Nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords. Nations shall know war no more." And everyone, and as they walked, they just looked at the soldiers, and how could they possibly be, how could they not thinking? They don't know, they don't have any feelings, they decided. Now, once the women reached the main gates of the Army Depot, they saw more soldiers than they ever would imagine could possibly be there. And those soldiers were dressed in full riot gear, wearing helmets, holding rifles, and some of those rifles had bayonets. They had long sticks hanging from their waists. Some of them had dogs. And the women thought, how can they be so afraid of us, of what we are saying? All we are saying is give peace a chance. Well, some of the women took things out of their backpacks they were carrying, and they pinned and tied those things on the fence. Some had signs that said, "Make bread, not bombs. Childcare, not warfare." There was one woman who pulled a pair of very worn ballet shoes out of her backpack, and she tied those shoes onto the fence and turned and said, "Those are my daughters." She said to me, "Mom, don't let there be a nuclear war. I want to be a ballerina when I grow up." Moms can do anything. And then the women sat next to the driveway by the gates. They sat on the grass, and it was soft and fresh. There were some little wildflowers growing here and there. And as they sat in the circle, they began to talk to each other and tell their stories of why they had come to the Seneca Army Depot. And they were a diverse group. And so there were many different reasons why they had come. But there was one reason they all held in common. They had all come because of the children. They wanted the children to be able to grow up in a world free from the threat of nuclear weapons. And then a song began. Child, 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 let me tell you how I feel. You have given me such treasures, I love you so. And the women rocked back and forth, holding as if it were a babe in their arms and sang, child, 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 let me tell you how I feel. You have given me such treasures, I love you so. They sang the song over and over in unison, in harmony. They sang it loud, they sang it soft. And as they sang, Whitney looked through the fence at those soldiers standing there like robots, no feelings. And then her gaze fell upon the face of a young soldier. She stopped singing. Why, he must be the same age as her older brother. And he could certainly be someone's brother. And he had definitely been someone's child. And then she changed one word of that song. Soldier, 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 let me tell you how I feel. And the other women heard that change and picked up the song. You have given me such treasures, I love you so. They sang that song in unison and in harmony. They sang it loud, they sang it soft. Soldier, 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 let me tell you how I feel. You have given me such treasures, I love you so. They sang that song, it got softer and softer until the melody went into the earth and it was silent. Whitney heard a truck go by behind her on the road. She heard a bird sing somewhere. And behind the fence, she heard the soldiers marching up, 2, 3, 4. And then she looked again at the soldier. Her gaze went through the fence, and that young soldier's face, his cheeks were wet. They were streaked with tears. He did have feelings. He did care. You have given me such treasures. I love you so. And the feelings, the compassion went through the fence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
listening.
Yes, thank you for telling. That story is very timely. What with the bloodshed in Ukraine, the bloodshed in Palestine, Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. And Veterans Day is coming up here in the United States. And as a Quaker, I feel like we can't villainize one group against another group, that there is that of God in everyone.
Judy?
Well, Moira, I think had her hand up first.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, Judy. Katie, I just want to thank you from my very heart. If I've ever heard a story for this time, that's the one. And also what you said right now, Eric, I'm going later to a demonstration which is for peace, not for one side, and no flags and no signs. It's for the peace and the well-being of all the victims. And it's, you know, it's not only that it's a story which is so important to hear now, it's also the way you tell it. It's I felt like drawn into the situation, like it was happening right now to me, to my,
Yeah.
to a daughter, and it it and what I also find so important, the attitude from which you tell this, this surprise in your face. So how can they? Why do they? And this is exactly, I think, the attitude we need, because I mean, like most people, I also feel like, well, we can't do anything anyway, and telling stories won't change the world. And listening to you, I'm not so sure about it. And telling stories might make a difference. At least that's what we can do. And just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
I really loved the honesty and the place of being that you shared the story from. You weren't just saying words, you were expressing words, you were expressing feelings. And that really came alive for me from the point on where the signs and the barbed wire. Before that, I wasn't, it seemed to be words of a story, but it started to come alive. I felt the progressive, foreboding. And I think that for me, when you got into the songs and you talked about it quieted till it seeped into the earth. Like you really just felt that. And that's the gift and the power of story. And for this time, this story, especially with the soldiers added, is so necessary because we're all humanity. We're all part of this planet. And why we can't see the humanity in people and we see territory and we see it has to do with control and power. And that's not the average person. So we need to speak to the average person. And your story really resonated with, it seems, with everyone here. So thank you very much, Katie, for sharing it.
Thank you.
Lisa, then Pratigya.
Good morning.
Good morning,
My
Lisa.
name, my name is Lisa. I'm from New York. And we have a boat that was launched in 1969
Yes.
by
Yes.
Pete Seeger called Clearwater. And these
Yes.
are the songs that I have lived with for the past 50 years at least. These are the songs we sing when we protest locally.
Yes.
And the power in the tears of the soldier brought tears for me. Thank you for telling your story.
And thank you for all your work.
We're all in this together.
Thank you. Pratigya.
Katie, I think very emotional story, could feel every emotion because you could feel it, and as a listener I could feel it. And for me, two things that really stood out was when the melody went into the earth, something that was very, very beautiful for me. I could literally see the melody settling into the earth when you said that, and that was just very beautiful for me. And at the end, when you said, the emotions went through the fence, I think somewhere here they are going through Zoom as well. They are definitely reaching out to us. So thanks for sharing that story.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mentioned to Katie some weeks ago that a possible theme for storytelling for this session was personal and community growth and maturity. And I guess that helped to inspire you to choose this story. And that was wonderful. This theme of personal and community growth and maturity, it's going to be the suggested theme of the festival in February, and for this series all of next year, this Monday night series. So So we're kicking it off a little bit early here in 2023, but that's going to be the theme for 2024. So I also participated in protests in New York in the early 80s. Is it when was this Seneca protest? Was it in the 80s?
That was in 1983. Did you go to
Yes.
the
No, I wasn't in Seneca, but
protest in
I-
New York City, or I think
yeah, New York City.
1 million
But-
people
but-
were in
but
the street.
were we protesting nuclear weapons or just nuclear power in general?
That, well, started with nuclear power in general.
Yes.
I was involved with closing down the Seabrook nuclear power
Oh,
plant.
thank you.
and- Yeah. So the second nuke did not get built, and that was the last nuclear power plant that was built in the US.
Mhm.
Now, however, people who are concerned about the environment are saying, oh, nuclear power is the answer to fossil
No.
fuel.
Mm.
It is not the answer.
Mhm.
It wasn't then, it isn't now.
Mhm. Hmm. Well, this
After all those years of fighting, Katie, we finally have closed down Indian Point, and now they're
Mhm.
trying to figure out where to dump the waste. And
Yeah.
and Hochul just said you can't dump it in the Hudson. She's our governor, and
Yeah.
they're still trying to dump it in the Hudson. They've been dumping water from Indian Point into the Hudson forever, so they don't understand why they can't continue.
Right. I mean, this is a discussion that we could take forever and ever and talk, and I would love to speak with you outside of this, Lisa. But I'm noticing the time is going, and there are other people who have stories to tell. And I just think it's really important for people to really stay aware, pay attention, read everything you can, and talk to other people. Those of us in the States, write to your legislators. I'm in Florida, you know what that means, but I haven't given up.
Yeah, we know what it means. Okay, let's stop the recording. And just a second. Thank you again, Katie. Oh, Moira, you want to say something before we stop the recording?
No, I just would like to add a very short observation. I love the description of the different women.
Ah,
And it reminded me so much. I've just finished reading a book which is called I Shall Not Hate by a Palestinian a gynecologist from Gaza, and who lost 3 daughters in the conflict. And he says, and this is really a very masculine society, and needn't tell you, and he says, if there's any solution to come, any change of thinking, it can only come from the women. And that reminded me a lot what you said. So that's all. Thank you.
okay, thank you. So now we'll stop the recording.